Alright guys, BLM here back with a new video, and in this video I'm making a very impromptu video here, but I'm back talking about The Last of Us, where obviously very recently we did get the release of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, and here I guess I'm going to be talking my thoughts on it. Now straight up again, I was not going to make this video. The main reason I'm making this video is simply because I've made a video about most other Last of Us things, so I guess we're going to do this, which, I mean, to be fair, there's not much to obviously talk about here in the sense that obviously it is a remaster. I'm not going to run through the entire main game because I've already done videos of that in the past. I will be redoing that video probably next year, which is probably going to be a massive video, but this will be mostly just talking about the things that are exclusive to this remaster and other topics surrounding this remaster. I mean, obviously a big one is the fact that, was this remaster necessary? Or this is a game that obviously isn't even 4 years old and is playable on current gen consoles even before this version was released. However, this is obviously the first native PS5 version of the game. And I will say, like, I mean, straight up, was it necessary? No, obviously. I mean, obviously this was not anything that needed to happen, but am I happy that it happened? Yeah. I mean, like, straight up, I do feel like this is obviously just the better way to play the game. Where obviously now this being a native PS5 game, it allows them to really take advantage of some of the improvements that they were able to add to The Last of Us Part 1 remake. That where, again, that it's a game that now has unlocked frame rate. That's something you can do in this game. This game has much better loading times, where, again, if you've ever watched a speed run of The Last of Us Part 2 or really just did anything that required loading, it takes forever. Again, sometimes skipping cutscenes literally takes minutes, to where now that's been shortened to just a few seconds. And also we got like the addition of speedrun mode, and we have like a separate cinematics page, on the fact that there's additional commentary here, which I have not listened to yet, but I'm sure when I replay the full game for the sake of my retrospective, I'll be listening to that. There's also guitar free play, which, to be fair, I'm never going to touch, but again, it's a cool little addition there. And it's also really funny that you can play as Gustavo within it. And again, there's a lot of like cool little extras added here. Now again, is it necessary? Was it something that we needed to happen? No, obviously, but I do think, considering the fact that this was only a $10 upgrade if you already own the game, and considering there's also other bigger aspects of additional content that I haven't talked about yet, I do think that is worth the price of admission, especially considering how cool the two later things I want to talk about are. Now again, if this was released full price as the Part 1 remake was, then obviously, yeah, this would be a lot more controversial in my mind. But again, for a $10 upgrade, it's largely just inoffensive to me. And like, I love it, like, people try to act as if like it's because of this remaster that we're not getting new games from Naughty Dog, when that's clearly not the case. I mean, clearly things like this in the Part 1 remake don't take as much resources as the brand new games that they are also making at Naughty Dog. Now obviously those games are taking much longer, and through that, that's causing this release of all these remasters and remakes. But for people that think that it's because of these remasters and remakes that we're not getting new things, are simply just completely misguided. And again, just as a whole, that is kind of just the way I look at this remaster. It's largely just inoffensive. Like, again, like, I'm personally happy it happened, just simply because, again, I like watching speedruns of this game. I would like to potentially speedrun it as well. And from that lens, again, thank God we got this, as it makes speedrunning this game a lot more palatable. And outside that, again, it's just cool to see these minor additions that are cool as well. And obviously, yeah, I know there's a criticism. Okay, why wasn't it just free? And again, in an ideal world, yeah, it would have been. But also, like, $10 is $10. Like, to me, $10 isn't much money, especially considering the other additions that we're about to be talking about, which are the main things I do want to talk about in this video. Where, again, there are two major additions that were made to this remaster that were brand new content for this remaster I do want to talk about more extensively. The first of which being the lost levels. Obviously, these cut sections of the game that we can now play. Now, obviously, they aren't finished, and I'm sure people will also criticize the fact that they didn't finish them, which, I mean, to be fair, I could kind of see that. Though, in a way, I do kind of find it interesting the way they approached it here, in the sense that obviously through these sections, we get to listen to commentary about these levels and learn more about the behind the scenes process, which, again, I think is cool. I personally like that aspect of it, to where, while, yeah, obviously it would have been cool if they actually finished these sections and we got to see how these sections would have fully played out. And I think in an ideal world, there would also probably be a little bit more of them, considering realistically you can finish these extremely quickly. I'm still personally fine with what we got here. I mean, the first level of which being the Jackson Party, a section that would have taken place following Abby Day 3, which was cut for pacing reasons. And it's really just a section of us playing as Ellie as she goes to the party, where we obviously see her and Dina dancing, and all this obviously taking place a day before the events of the beginning of the game. And straight up, I can fully understand why they cut this here. I do agree with the mentality that they brought up in the commentary of the fact that this would break up the end game a bit too much, to where once the end game starts going, you don't want to really lose that momentum. And I could definitely see how this would lose that momentum. Again, this seemed like it was kind of a superfluous section. Again, it didn't really need to be there, and I understand why it was cut. Though again, it would have been cool to have these like little mini games that you can play along the way, where it would have been this like nice little bit of downtime. Though again, I can understand why it was cut here. The next section we got is the Seattle sewers, which obviously is in the game to a degree, though obviously it was greatly reduced, where in the main game, all we really get of this section is a short platforming section of us having to get our way out, while here it's expanded to a much bigger set piece of us having to do some environmental puzzles. And we were supposed to get this like little moment of Ellie finding a dead clicker, and that clicker like momentarily turning into Joel, and it reminding us of Ellie's PTSD. And again, that would have been a nice little addition to have there, really focusing even more on how much Ellie is motivated by Joel here. Though again, another section that I do think at the end of the day was probably cut for the better. I know it was cut for pacing issues and feeling like the section went on for a bit long. Though I will say also, I do feel like the type of environmental puzzles that were here were kind of missed in the main game. I do think maybe more aspects of this system could have been implemented in the main game, though again, another section I do feel like was cut probably for the better in this instance. Though then we get to the final lost level, that being the hunt. Another section that would have taken place after Abby Day 3, one that seemed to be much closer to being in the main game than the others, one that has a fully rendered cutscene, one that I will say straight up, I think this one could have been in the main game. I do think this one actually, I do wish was in there. Now I understand why they cut it. Again, like once you're getting into this end game, you would want it to continue on, not lose momentum. But really, I feel like for me, the farm was a section that was a bit slow paced as was anyway. And I do feel like this section would have added to Ellie's character, obviously again, furthering her PTSD, which again, to be fair, they do in the farm section of the game. So I do also really like the fact that this section parallels the hunt in the original game. The fact that this parallels Ellie's hunting of a deer in the winter section of the original game, with this having Ellie hunting down a boar in a very similar light. Now I will say the actual boar boss battle that was here does look really ridiculous, and to be fair, obviously it would have been patched up by the time of the main release, you would think, to where hopefully it looks better than what it does here, as again, it just looks really stupid. But outside, I do feel like this is overall just a section that I do actually think would have been cool to have in the main game. The farm section of the game was kind of missing a little something. I do feel like for me, it kind of just goes on a bit too long without much real interaction from the player themselves. And while again, I can get the criticisms of that this would make that section of the game a bit too long when really you just want to get to the resolution already. I feel like this is something that I actually think would have been better off if it was left in. And maybe you modify the farm to some degree to kind of accommodate for this section going on for a little bit longer. But again, I still do understand the initial decision to cut this from the game. But with that, again, those are all the lost levels, which again, were cool to see here. Again, I do wish that it lasted a little bit longer, and the fact that again you could pretty much finish all these well within an hour. But the other main addition to the main game, again the last topic we'll be talking about in this video, is No Return, this new roguelike mode of the game that straight up coming into this I thought looked cool, but wasn't really something that I was super excited for. It wasn't something that felt like it was something for me. Again, I'm not someone that's super big into roguelikes. I'm someone that plays games mostly for the story at this point and the overall general experience of playing the game more so than playing for difficulty or trying to get a top score. Though straight up, No Return is just really fun. I actually genuinely really enjoyed my experience playing this. Now, sure, I wish I had more time to play more of this, but I just feel like this mode is just kind of fun to be doing these runs that, again, straight up don't take that much time. Again, runs take less than an hour each, and through that are not super intensive. So for me personally, I mean, this just feels like the perfect game for me just to pop in and play when I'm limited on time. And I do feel like this mode just in general had way more depth than I ever expected it to have. Again, the fact that there are all these different approaches to playing the game and all these different ways to get points. The fact that you get extra points for how quickly you kill enemies. The fact that you get more points for how many enemies you kill in specific modes. The fact that there are all these different modes and all these very varied types of encounters, again, was all a shock to me. And again, I just found this section genuinely fun to have to manage your resources and health in a way to get you from encounter to encounter. Obviously having to make sure you don't die in the process, but also still obviously having to pick up resources to be able to craft tools to use in combat, but you also can upgrade just basic survival skills. You can obviously upgrade your weapons along the way. You can also buy weapons along the way. And again, all these different systems that were implemented for this mode were just really fun. And the fact that you also have a varied amount of characters, each of which having their own different skills and different gameplay styles, which, to be fair, I mean, a lot of them do feel very samey still, but I overall just really love the progression system where it feels like you're unlocking things every run, and those things obviously shake up future runs. Like, again, different modes, you got different type of gameplay modifiers that can be on during certain encounters, the likes of gambits and dead drops, which add this interesting risk and reward to how you approach each section. And again, just in general, there's just so many interesting additions to this mode that really just shakes up how you play it, which just adds to the variety and like the longevity of playing this mode. Now, straight up at this point, I've not had much time to really play a lot of this for myself. I've done 5 runs on my own at this current point, with me only having completed 2 of those. Literally my first one, I died at the very first wave of my first encounter, simply because I kind of forgot the controls of the game. But I've been playing mostly on moderates. I have tried it on harder difficulties, which are the other times I didn't complete my runs. But again, I had a lot of fun with this experience. Again, seeing all these set pieces from the original game now being recontextualized for these more random encounters, and you having to really learn the level design of the game and plot out how you're going to complete these encounters with the materials you have. And it all culminates in this massive boss battle at the end that constantly shifts between runs, with there being more that you unlock over time, many of which taking inspiration from these bigger fights in the main game as well, which is again a cool addition there. And I've watched a lot of people play No Return as well, and just seeing all these different types of encounters that you eventually come across. Again, it just feels like this game is just filled with so many possibilities. Really, like, this mode in itself is worth the $10 price of admission in my mind, where, like, this mode in itself could have been sold for $20-$30 in its own right, and I think it would still feel kind of justified. But this is just genuinely a fun gameplay experience that really emphasizes the strengths of The Last of Us 2's gameplay, and also just gives you more of that gameplay, where obviously, like, as is, I mean, you could have only played the main game's encounters over and over again, which are all very samey, easy to memorize. Where if here, obviously, there's a lot more variety. Like, it's obviously a mode that very much incentivizes you having to create your own new strategies and all these different approaches over the likes of just replaying missions in the main game, where again, you know how those sections are going to play out. So again, I just think there's a lot of fun to be had with this mode. For me, this was definitely the best addition to the game here. That to me kind of lessens the blow about the loss of factions. I do feel like this is something that's actually probably more in my wheelhouse. So something that I would revisit more often, and again, just pop in and play. And something that's really cool about this as well is the inclusion of daily runs, where every day there is a specific run that is only added for that one day, and you compare your scores to the other players. And again, it's this cool little addition there that really incentivizes you to play this every day, which straight up I've not been able to experience, as again, you do need to play 9 runs before you unlock that mode, which is kind of annoying, but still again, really cool addition there. And really, just in general, this is a mode that, again, I just think has so many possibilities. And I would not be surprised if they do end up adding more to this down the road. Potentially add in the Part 1 encounters, as obviously, like, Part 1 is built in the same engine. Maybe even add more characters. Where, again, I think this mode is great as is. And I think there's a lot of potential for how they expand it down the road. To where, in general, I did really, really love the experience of playing No Return here, with it just feeling like an entirely unique Last of Us experience that really made this entire remaster worth getting. everything. And through that, I mean, those are my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2 Remaster. Again, like, at the end of the day, I don't know why people are upset about getting this for $10. Again, there's enough new content there that is fully worth it. Again, no return in itself is worth it alone, but then the addition of lost levels, all different commentaries, you have speedrun mode, you got all these new skins, you have the unlocked frame rate, you obviously have upgraded textures, though to be fair, again, you barely notice them, but again, there is a lot here. There's a lot new here to where I think for $10, I mean, this is well worth the price of admission, though I'm sure people are still gonna complain about it. But there we go, and that's all I gotta say on Part 2 Remaster. Again, just a quick video that I wanted to make to just say my piece on it. Now again, down the road, I do intend on redoing my Last of Us 2 retrospective in the same way that I did for Part 1, which will probably be next year. Again, it will be the 5-year anniversary of the game, so that'll probably be a good time to do it. So stay tuned for that. Along with that, I still have some other Last of Us videos coming up. I have my Left Behind retrospective coming out very soon. Should be pretty early on in February. Along with that, I also made some other Last of Us videos that are going to come out eventually, in a character ranking, a cutscene ranking. I'll also talk about Season 2 of the HBO show when that comes out. But outside that, obviously just expect more of the same from the channel. But for now, that is the video. Thank you for watching.